The music program is in waltz rhythm.
It was a short June night. The big city fell asleep, and me and my colleagues in newspaper, film, radio, and television have been starting an unusual day of work. We shoved down the flight control subway to prepare a report from Venus. We raced from VeGa's automatic space station, which was fast approaching Venus during these hours. The Flight Control Center was also preparing for the events that Earth specialists and operators were looking forward to. Go to your jobs in the main room. They also had an unusual job to do. Tonight on Venus, there are studies that have been dreaming for years, prepared by scientists and engineers from many countries.
Today, the first phase of VeGa's space trip will be over. Yes.
Here, in the main radio tower, 100 million miles away, reporting to Venus. To prepare for this work, both my colleagues are teleoperators and specialists in the main control room. As early as December 1984 years ago, this unique flight appeared. Soviet missiles were taken to Venus and further to Halley's Comet, one after the other two VeGa stations. Right there. It's a normal flight. This was the beginning of the Soviet Union Yapos initiative among the international community, a space experiment involving scientists and engineers from many socialist and capitalist countries. Today, there will be no television broadcasts of Venus, no spectacular surface panoramas. Only the digital telemetric information from different instruments will tell about the progress of the experiment. So the best way to go is to get the help of scientists. Of course, everyone is interested in the significance of this experiment. What will he bring to science? In short, why are we going to capture again? I'm asking the director of the Institute of Geochemistry and Analytical Chemistry, Barsuka Vojanovic. What is the interest of geologists in Venus? But not just geologists. This is interesting to the ideology of the geochemistry of the tech and to all those who are studying the history of the formation of the solar system and its history of development. Probably because Venus, the planet that is closest to Earth in size, by mass, has many common features of development. In any case, the first billion years are probably almost the same. Then our paths of development broke apart. But that's the difference, though. It allows us to see on Venus what we don't see on Earth, so we see evidence there of the early stages of the planet's life. We see the unique path of Venus evolution that will help us to understand how our own planet has evolved. The land of Venus is already studying a series of machines, but these are VeGa's machines. They were called upon to answer a number of other very important critical questions. Venus is still the fifth planet of riddles. 4 days ago, Venus successfully examined dig alone. It's Lady 2's turn.
Flight Control Center. It continues to receive and process telemetric information from the VeGa to Automatic Interplanetary Station.
In the end, the name of Venus was used in Venus.
What's the difference between running and running?
That's a question I'm asking the deputy project manager, Rolda Gustavovich of Kremny.
Every expedition to Venus brings a new discovery, but it also poses new challenges. This new task certainly affects the image of the station itself.
But one example is Venus's penultimate station, 1516, and VeGa's spacecraft, which is flying to Venus today. This primarily affects the onboard system, the complexly powerful equipment, and, of course,
the shape of the machine is changing and its program is changing.
The VeGa machine is designed to address the problem of the study of Venus and Galley comet in a comprehensive manner. It has a dual composition of science. To explore the planet Venus itself, the launch machines and the science onboard complex are placed, which are then released with the Galley comet.
The engine. There's an estimate of the time when the machine will enter Venus's atmosphere.
The machine launched on Venus contains a landing vehicle of approximately the same type as it had previously fought on Venus,
but with a new set of scientific instruments, and it contains a completely new research tool for a floating static station, which,
for the first time in the Venus atmosphere in its cloud layer, should conduct a set of scientific studies to regulate the composition of the clouds and make them.
What? It's estimated that helium is currently filling the zombie balloons with the zombie fills for the next 230 seconds.
In this case, the decay into the atmosphere is produced at a second cosmic velocity. Rollout is performed when complex dynamic operations are performed and the floor is exposed. The receptions for which the landing machine and the floating filthy spring filling station are hidden. The descent dynamics are also underway. In a short period of time, you need to fill the shell and drop the unnecessary structures, drop the excess ballast. Empty cylinders from under the helium, and crucify the right.
Vanya. I got a signal from a Transact probe.
Making a drift in the Venus atmosphere. What is the main complexity of such an experiment? I asked the project manager, Vyacheslav Mikhailovich. First of all, I wanted to emphasize that the first phase of VeGa's project was the success of the mayor of the state-of-the-art zones. It kind of sounds like it's gonna be a simple system, but to create a new one, and it's called a design link, it's called a machine release. It required a great deal of constructive research and, in particular, experimental work, but, of course, we got excited about those moments. When there's a year of loose hunger across this hologram, which is what it is now, it can be said that what was conceived and worked out, it's now fully successful. The weather is building on the way forward to say swimming is a beautiful house number 2. She sees bat. It swims about 50 miles 53 high. On the shadow side, it will go to the sun side of the bright side about 24 hours. That's how you felt. It's all up to you. The power of the fiber has batteries, but we hope, as well as the first call back about 40 years ago about what it's meant to be. 4 days ago, we were following the work of the first Venezuelan aerostat. Today's research is now in progress for the second time. What are the preliminary results of the first experiment in the century? I spoke to Vyacheslav Mikhailovich Polivanov, Deputy Director of the Institute for Space Research.
1.
Launching machines. First warehouse umbrella, which entered the atmosphere of Venus on June 11th. We'd done a lot of work. While the first vehicle landed and the balloon on the umbrella opened north of the equator by about 7 degrees, the second on the other hand, is symmetrical in the southern hemisphere of Venus. And we saw, when the first core of the statue probe was floating, a deviation, a gradual shift of it to the north pole of Venus. Similarly, we expect the second umbrella to move gradually during its voyage to the southern pole of the planet.
That's a curious phenomenon, too.
We'll have to explain. Now it's the second time we've started to operate the staggered zones, and the first signals have begun to be received by our stations. They will then be received by foreign stations. It's gradually moving from east to west of the reception strip. As soon as we get this information and select the coordinates, speed, and telemetric data from the METH instruments at the gondola, we will also have the characteristics we had from the first air of the statue probe. Well, what were the first results?
It is confirmed that there are so-called super rotations at these altitudes,
i.e. above the rapid rotation of the cloud layer and the pleasant tail. The rotation of 70 meters per second and the ticket of about 200 miles per hour is a fantastic speed because they are many times larger. What's the rate of rotation of Venus around its axis? Now that it is so excruciating in the storm sky of Venus, the landing machine is close to the surface. As he stumbled on the brake panel, he continuously explored the planet's atmosphere.
tension is boarding the surface of Venus. The actual time of touching the surface of Venus is 6 hours and 50 seconds of Moscow Eternity time.
But definitely just landed VeGa 2 station. Its home is a complex of instruments designed to achieve this and not allow for surface chemistry until the concepts of the mineral and chemical composition of the rock to which the station has fallen have helped.
We're starting to analyze the ground of the planet.
Research equipment installed on board the landing vehicle.
Every landing station on Venus.
I've had a new scientific burden on myself. While the first station, starting with Venus 4's landing station, was the primary goal of reaching the surface and determining, at least indirectly, the school's overall density of the soil, the next stations were given increasingly complex tasks. The stations were then equipped with special devices for soil extraction and analysis. In other words, each station gradually increased the range of supplies needed to expand the food complex. The last station not only has new scientific equipment, but sits in principle
on the dark side, on the night side of Venus.
So, basically, we're not gonna have an image from the landing stations this time because we're landing on the night side. But the science complex is much wider than the previous stations that we planted a few years ago.
Attention! A rapid analysis of the ground operation of the intake device showed that it was within the limits of strength. Venus's clot at the landing point is soft, like sand.
After the first phase of the Venus experiments, the stations continue their journey to Halley's Comet. They'll be corrected a few times before they come to the closed comet area before they fly near it in front of the stage. And somewhere else, in February, about the 10th of February, the month before the station's flight to the comet will open an automatic stable platform. All instruments operating on it will be included and 3 consecutive main sessions of 14 million kilometers will be held. The first session, the second session is about 1 million kilometers, and the third session is after the mid-hour before the summer to the center. And if we can successfully fly in front of the center without damaging the fast, very fast dusty comet science equipment, then let's keep going. Not many people know about this job. I'm asking the director of the Institute of Applied Geophysics a dozen times, and your work is just getting started. Sergey Ivanovich, yes, that's right. My colleagues have now successfully completed their work on the study of Venus. And VeGa to Vegas 2 spacecraft continue to travel in outer space towards VeGa, the comet of Galley. This is the moment when the work of our service, which deals with monitoring and forecasting, begins. Space weather. Such space weather is primarily necessary for astronauts. Why? Because cosmonauts have gone into space, they work in this environment, and we need to know what's coming. The flight route is going to be like this, it's going to be sunshine and so on. Who else needs space weather? It's needed by the comms because we're working in one or the other frequency range. It's the state of the ionosphere that we've learned. You can keep a sure reception, or you can pass on this information. This requires information for seafarers because, far from home, seafarers need to know their location to be able to communicate with various points on the territory of the Soviet Union. And everything around here is helped by year-on-year knowledge in space, weather forecasting in space. A new phase is now in place for the Govia 2 stations. It's the work of the GEL station, solar sensing, and near-solar space. The minutes run on the surface of a distant morning star. Rick's landing machine will bring an aerostat over Venus to sleep. A few more hours of work and everything we've seen and learned here this night will be reporting on an amazing experiment that brought together scientists, engineers, workers from many countries. The Soviet probe signals will fly to Earth for another 2 days. We are investigating the mysterious cloud layer of Venus. Research is continuing.